Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So the Super Bowl has ended, and a lot of the offseason coaching carousel has kicked into high gear now. A lot of staffs had already been finalized, but for the Saints, considering they were waiting on Clint Kubiak and the 49ers to finish playing, only then could a lot of this become finalized. Well, the Saints did finally finalize and officially announce the Clint Kubiak hire with the post on Wednesday evening. So the Clint Kubiak hire officially official now from the New Orleans Saints. And with that, we're getting much more news as the Saints are replacing a lot of this coaching staff. So there were three hires/interviews that are relevant today. So I'll tell you what each of them are, and then we'll go through them individually. So the Saints, according to Matt Zenitz, are expected to hire former Chargers running back coach Derek Foster. So that's the first, running backs coach Derek Foster. Nick Underhill reports that the Saints are targeting Ravens assistant Keith Williams for the wide receiver coach to replace Cody Burns, who we know was fired this offseason as well. And then Matthew Paris from NOLA.com is reporting that Rick Dennison has been added to the Saints coaching staff as well in a to-be-determined role, but he's got a background in offensive line, running game coordinator, all that stuff. So when I connect these dots, it'll make more sense. So let me go through each of these individually if I could. I'm going to start with Derek Foster. So Derek Foster has spent the last 3 years with the LA Chargers, and during that time worked with Austin Eckler. And Eckler, this is hard to believe. I don't know that many people would have assumed this, but Austin Eckler, over the last 3 years, has led the NFL in touchdowns. He's got 44 touchdowns over the last 3 years, which leads the NFL. And his position coach there was Derek Foster, who's 38 years old. Again, another young coach, 38 years old. And before going to the Chargers, worked in college. Coached at Iowa from 2018 to 2020. Worked at Samford, Northwestern State, and Tennessee. So he's bounced around a good bit, got college and pro experience, but the most noteworthy thing here is working with Austin Eckler the last 3 seasons. I think this one is so important because what we're seeing primarily here with the Saints, and when we spoke to Brian Peacock, who covers the 49ers, and we talked specifically about what changes that we might expect to see, his first thing was about the running game. And so my first thought as I go to it is Alvin Kamara and maximizing Alvin Kamara again. And the best comp when I think about it is not Austin Eckler. And I know that's who Derek Foster worked with, but the best comp for Kamara is Christian McCaffrey. Follow me here, okay? McCaffrey and Kamara were both taken in the same draft. They were both taken in the 2017 draft. And McCaffrey had a good start to his career. He was an all-pro in year 3 in 2019 when he ran for 1,300 yards and he had over 1,000 receiving yards. He was an all-pro. But after that all-pro season in 2019, the injury bug bit, and he just wasn't consistent in Carolina. Played in just 3 games in 2020, played in just 7 games in 2021, and then 6 games into 2022, he was traded to the Niners. Now, combined in 22 with Carolina and then the Niners, he went over 1,000 yards rushing. So he found a little bit of his groove again. And then this year, at age 27, Christian McCaffrey led the NFL with 1,459 rushing yards. So after having 2 injury-plagued seasons and then being traded in 2022, McCaffrey leads the NFL in rushing. He found his resurgence there in San Francisco. So the hope is, look at Kamara. When you look at Alvin Kamara, he was, of course, the NFL's Offensive Rookie of the Year back in 2017 when he came to New Orleans. And he was a mighty productive player in tandem with Mark Ingram those first few seasons. And then, and he's never rushed for 1,000 yards, but it was always the combo of rushing and receiving. Each of his first 3 seasons, he caught exactly 81 passes. And then in his 4th season, he caught 83 passes. The last 3 years, however, we have seen Alvin Kamara's production drop. He went from 932 rushing yards to 898 to 897 to 694 this year. His receptions went from 83 to 47 to 57, bounced back up this year to 75. So they did make a very concerted effort to get Kamara the ball in the passing game, but he only had 1 receiving touchdown. Keep in mind that Kamara, had over the last 3 years, his rushing total dropped, and he's not exceeded 500 receiving yards since 2020. He also hasn't played in a full season since 2017, his rookie year. So when I think about McCaffrey having had those back-to-back injury-plagued seasons and being traded in the middle of 22, Kamara has missed 14 games between 2018 and 2023. He's missed almost a full season. Played in a full season as a rookie, but since then he's missed 14 games, which is almost a full season due to injury and then obviously the suspension as well. So you can draw a very clear parallel of what the hope is with this offense and bringing in Kubiak and then a running backs coach like Derek Foster, who's another young assistant. Remember what they're doing here. Kubiak's 36. Janoko, the quarterbacks coach, is 35. Derek Foster, the new running backs coach, is 38. They are getting intentionally younger on their coaching staff. And maybe that helps you find the same resurgence for Kamara that the 49ers found with Christian McCaffrey. So Derek Foster, one of the new hires. As Nick Underhill reported, Keith Williams is being targeted as the receivers coach. The most important part here, that Keith Williams, has coached in the NFL, but he also coached in college at Nebraska, Tulane. Most recently he's with the Ravens, right? Receivers coach. But he coached in college at Nebraska, Tulane, and Fresno State. You connecting the dots? Fresno State, where he worked with Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. This is another example of the Saints trying to maximize Derek Carr. And I'm for it. I continue, again, to be abundantly clear, I don't think Derek Carr is ever going to be a great quarterback. He's a decade into his career. We know what he is. But if the Saints are committing to Derek Carr, and clearly they have committed to Derek Carr, then do what you can to maximize him. Last year in free agency, the Saints signed Foster Moreau, a Derek Carr teammate with the Raiders. Brian Edwards, a Derek Carr teammate with the Raiders. Jonathan Abram, a Derek Carr teammate with the Raiders. Over and again, they kept bringing in free agents from the Raiders who knew Carr. It was all about making him more familiar. Now you're bringing in a receivers coach with ties to Derek Carr from Fresno State. You don't think you rubber stamped this? Of course he did. If you're committing to Derek Carr, then do what you can to maximize him. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is go belly up again and then say, yeah, well, it didn't work, but it's not Carr's fault. Get him a better offensive coordinator. Get him a better quarterbacks coach. Get him people who know him. Get him people, there are no excuses. You're getting one of the brightest young minds in the NFL. You're getting players that know Derek Carr, coaches that know Derek Carr. You're doing what you can to maximize the guy that you've invested $150 million in with $100 million guaranteed. The Saints have said Derek Carr is our franchise. Okay, if Derek Carr is your franchise, then do what you have to do to maximize him. So, Derek Foster, running backs coach. They're interviewing Keith Williams for the receiver coach job, which looks like that's going to happen. And then Matthew Paris over at NOLA.com is reporting one other staff addition, and this is Rick Dennison. Now, Rick Dennison is not a young coach. He's 65 years old. But Rick Dennison worked with Clint Kubiak in Minnesota as a senior advisor. Also worked as an offensive line coach and run game coordinator. Before that, he worked with Clint Kubiak's father, Gary Kubiak, with the Texans as their offensive coordinator. At the same time, John Benton, who the Saints have just hired as their offensive line coach, was the Texans' offensive line coach. So it's very obvious what Dennis Allen is doing. He's saying we're going to go get people that help us maximize Derek Carr, and I'm letting Clint Kubiak hire his offensive staff. Who do you want? Who do you need? You worked with Janocko in Minnesota. You want him? Get him. You think Williams, having worked with Derek Carr in college, works? Get him. Oh, John Benton, that's a guy who worked with your dad and lifelong NFL offensive line coach. Go get him. Oh, Rick Dennison, who's worked with you in Minnesota, worked with your dad as well, long time. You want it? Go get him. The smartest thing Dennis Allen is doing right now is getting out of the way. I'm not being facetious. I'm being dead serious, and I applaud it because it is so hard sometimes for people in positions of authority to let go. And the reality is, if you are a good leader, you understand what your weaknesses are, and you hire people who have those as strengths, and then you empower them to do their job. You put them in the position and you get the hell out of the way. Say, I brought you here to do this, go do it. Dennis Allen is a defensive-minded head coach. He had to go get people that could maximize his quarterback, modernize the offense, and make this offense a top 10 NFL offense again to complement the defense. Okay. You went and got Kubiak. You plucked a branch off the Shanahan-McVay tree. Love it. And now you've said, okay, Clint, what do you need? Here's your whiteboard. Go draw it up, and we'll make it happen. And that's what he's doing. And I applaud it because it's not an easy thing to do. But I think it's self-aware for Dennis Allen to recognize his shortcomings. He's a defensive-minded coach. He doesn't need to be going hire an offensive assistants. You hired an offensive coordinator. Let your offensive coordinator build his staff. That's what Dennis Allen's doing here. I don't know Rick Dennison. I couldn't tell you a single thing about Rick Dennison other than what I read in his bio. I have no knowledge whatsoever of Rick Dennison. But if Clint Kubiak says, I want that guy because he's going to make us better, the only answer Dennis Allen should have is, or the only question Dennis Allen should have is, okay, should we make the check out to Dennis? Is that his first name? Is it, let's see, Rick Dennison. Dennison, is that one N or two? Like, that should be the only question. Give them what they need to succeed so there are no excuses. So next year, hopefully the Saints are back in the playoffs, ending this 3-year drought. And if they're not, there are no excuses. None whatsoever. You've overhauled the offensive staff. You hired Clint Kubiak. You've given him every assistant he wants. You've brought in people that Derek Carr knows and are comfortable there. You're bringing in run game specialists that have maximized productivity. Yes, you have everything you need. Now go into free agency in the draft, find ways to improve your roster, and if you're not in the playoffs in a crappy division again, it's over. And it's time to hit the reset button. But I like what they're doing. It's obvious to see what they're doing. The approach makes a lot of sense. Now let's see if it works. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.